Do not list the children as civilians, High Magistrate Orvin said, without looking up from the screen. List them as disputed property. The room went so quiet that even the translation drone stopped humming for half a second. Ambassador Grace Holloway stood alone at the center of the Galactic Council floor, a small woman in a dark blue suit, one hand resting on the back of an empty chair that had been reserved for Earth's legal aid. She did not shout. She did not slam her fist down. She only stared up at the 12 alien judges seated above her and asked, "Would you like to say that again while the cameras are still on?" Orvin's silver eyes narrowed. He was 8 feet tall, wrapped in ceremonial white armor polished so brightly it reflected the stars outside the chamber windows. Behind him floated the seal of the Valar Dominion, an empire that had swallowed 32 border worlds without ever raising its voice. To the council, the Valar were order, stability, money. Humanity, by comparison, was a late arrival with noisy music, ugly freighters, stubborn lawyers, and an annoying habit of reading every treaty before signing it. The dispute should have been small. 12 human families on the farming moon of Red Creek had refused to abandon their homes after the Dominion claimed the moon contained a sacred mineral deposit. Earth had filed an appeal. The council had delayed it. Then the Dominion arrived with transport ships, corporate surveyors, and a relocation order written in language so cold it might as well have been printed on ice. Grace had flown 46 light years to argue for time. Just time. 72 hours for the families to pack, for the kids to be moved, for the little town schoolhouse with its red metal roof and hand-painted American flag to be cleared out safely. Orvin had denied even that. Human sentimentality is not evidence, he said. Your settlers were warned that frontier claims are unstable. Their offspring remain attached to an illegal occupation site. The Dominion is not responsible for emotional inconvenience. A few delegates shifted in their seats. Nobody stepped in. That was the part Grace would remember later. Not the insult. Not the threat. The silence. The galaxy had 1,000 laws for trade lanes, ship salvage, mineral rights, customs fees, and diplomatic seating charts. But when 12 human children were reduced to a line item, the great civilized species suddenly found their hands very full. Grace lowered her eyes to her tablet. Her thumb moved once. A tiny green light blinked near the corner, confirming the live feed had reached Sol. Then she looked back up. "For the record," she said, her voice calm enough to make several translators recalibrate. Earth is asking the Council to recognize the Red Creek families as protected civilians under Article 9. Orvin leaned back, almost amused. Denied. Earth is asking for a humanitarian delay of 72 hours. Denied. Earth is asking permission to send medical and evacuation crews. Orvin smiled then, thin and satisfied. Denied. Grace nodded slowly, as if he had just confirmed a lunch reservation. She placed the tablet on the table, folded her hands, and breathed out once through her nose. On the human news feeds, that tiny gesture would be replayed for years. Because everyone from Texas ranchers to Boston dockworkers knew what it meant when a calm woman stopped trying to be polite. "All right," Grace said. "Then Earth withdraws its request." The chamber stirred. Orvin's smile widened. He thought she had surrendered. Most of them did. Grace picked up her coat from the back of the chair and turned toward the exit. Halfway there, she paused and looked over her shoulder. "One clarification, Magistrate. Since the Council has refused civilian protection, emergency delay, and evacuation access, Earth will no longer treat this as a legal dispute." Orvin's expression changed by one careful inch. "And what will Earth treat it as?" Grace's answer was quiet, plain, and American enough to sound almost casual. "A rescue." The word rescue moved through the chamber like a match dropped into dry grass. Not war. Not retaliation. Rescue. A clean human word. A word with ambulances, neighbors, flashlights, fathers carrying sleeping kids through storms. High Magistrate Orvin did not understand why it made the smaller delegates sit straighter. He only heard weakness wrapped in sentiment. "You have no authority to enter Dominion territory," he said. Grace Holloway buttoned her coat slowly. "Red Creek is under appeal. By council law, jurisdiction is frozen until judgment." Orvin tapped one long finger against his podium. "Judgment has been issued." "No," Grace said. "You issued a denial of protections. You did not settle ownership." For the first time, the chamber screens behind the judges flickered. A legal text appeared, not translated from Earth law, but from the Council Charter itself. Article 17. Emergency Retrieval Rights. Written 600 years ago after a mining collapse on a moon nobody in that room remembered. The clause had been forgotten by almost everyone. Almost. Grace looked up at the judges. Any member species may retrieve its citizens from an active hazard zone when local authority refuses safe passage, provided the retrieving party minimizes damage to infrastructure and files notice within 1 standard hour. Orvin stared at the text as if it had insulted him personally. That clause concerns accidents. Show me the word accident, Grace said. The translators carried her voice perfectly. Not loud, not dramatic, just tired, like a school principal giving a student one last chance to tell the truth. One of the aquatic delegates blinked sideways. A trade representative from the Marrow Compact leaned toward his aide and whispered, "She is right." Orvin heard it. His jaw tightened. This is procedural trickery. No, Grace said. This is reading. On Red Creek, 46 light-years away, the little farming town of Mercy Bend was waking up to an orange dawn. The moon was mostly wheat fields, water towers, low houses, and dirt roads that turned sticky after rain. People had come there because land was cheap and the sky had 2 pale suns that made every evening look like a faded postcard. At the schoolhouse, Mrs. Lena Ortiz had pulled all 12 children into the cafeteria after the Dominion loudspeakers ordered civilians to remain indoors. She was 58, a former 4th-grade teacher from Oklahoma, and she had the kind of calm that comes from handling fire drills, bee stings, and 20 kids after cupcakes. "Everybody stay away from the windows," she said. "Backpacks on. Shoes tied. No arguing." A boy named Caleb raised his hand because he was the kind of kid who raised his hand during emergencies. "Mrs. Ortiz, are we in trouble?" She looked at the faces staring back at her. Human kids. Scared, brave, missing teeth, messy hair, one girl still holding a stuffed rabbit with one ear. "No, sweetheart," she said. "We are waiting for a ride." Outside, Dominion survey drones drifted over the fields in neat silver lines. Their officers stood near the town marker, bored and irritated, checking claim maps as if the families were already gone. They never looked up. That was their mistake. Because far beyond the moon, past the gas giant, past the legal boundary where Dominion patrols had grown lazy, 24 unmarked Earth rescue craft dropped out of dark space with their running lights off. No anthem, no broadcast, no threat, just matte gray hulls and steady engines, moving in perfect silence toward Red Creek. Dominion Commander Sereth laughed when the first human ships appeared on his scope. They were too small. That was his first mistake. He stood inside the temporary claim office beside Mercy Bend's water tower, watching 24 gray dots slide toward Red Creek on a cracked blue tactical display. No banners. No escort dreadnoughts. No glowing plasma shields. Just ugly little rescue craft shaped like old shipping containers with engines strapped to the back. "That is Earth's response," he asked, turning to his officers. "School buses with rockets." A few of them clicked in amusement. The Dominion had brought survey ships, legal enforcers, and 2 orbital cutters large enough to make any frontier colony reconsider its attitude. Sereth had expected noise from the humans. Maybe a complaint. Maybe a recording of crying parents for the council feeds. What he had not expected was silence. The human ships did not answer his hail at first. They just kept coming, smooth and steady, dropping through the upper atmosphere in a wide formation that looked almost lazy until one of his navigators noticed the pattern. "Commander," the officer said, leaning closer. "They are not approaching the town." Sereth frowned. "Then where are they going?" "Everywhere around it." On the council floor, Grace Holloway watched the same feed on the giant chamber screen. Orvin had demanded the live link be restored, certain the galaxy would witness humanity embarrassing itself. Instead, every delegate saw the rescue craft split like pieces on a chessboard. 4 settled near the schoolhouse. 3 went for the clinic. 2 hovered above the grain silos. Others landed on dirt roads, pasture lanes, and the flat roof of the community store. Not one crossed the Dominion mineral perimeter. Not one touched a survey rig. It was legal. Annoyingly, perfectly legal. Orvin's face stiffened. "They are staging an occupation." Grace did not look at him. "They are staging car seats." Down in Mercy Bend, Mrs. Ortiz heard the low rumble before she saw the ship. Dust lifted outside the cafeteria windows, soft as fog. The children froze. Then a voice came through every school speaker at once, warm, calm, and unmistakably human. "This is Lieutenant Aaron Pike, United Earth Rescue. Mrs. Ortiz, keep the children seated until my team reaches the door. We have snacks, blankets, and a very boring ride ahead." One little girl whispered, "They brought snacks." Mrs. Ortiz almost laughed, but her throat tightened too much. "Of course they did, honey." The side door opened, and 6 rescuers stepped in wearing matte gray pressure suits with the Earth seal on the shoulder. They did not point weapons. They did not shout. One of them knelt, so he was eye level with Caleb. "Name? Caleb Turner. Good to meet you, Caleb Turner. You are going to help me count heads, all right?" Caleb swallowed hard, then nodded like he had just been promoted. Outside, Dominion officers started moving toward the schoolhouse, angry now, waving tablets and jurisdiction codes. Lieutenant Pike stepped onto the porch before they reached the steps. He was broad-shouldered, maybe 40, with tired eyes and the patient expression of a dad who had fixed too many lawn mowers on Saturday mornings. "This property is under Dominion claim," Sareth called over the loudspeaker. Pike glanced at the school behind him, then at the 12 children lining up inside with backpacks on. "Commander, I am going to say this once. We are not here for your rocks." Sareth's tone sharpened. "Then leave." Pike pulled a folded paper from his chest pocket, old-fashioned and absurd under an alien sky. "Emergency retrieval notice, filed with the council 18 minutes ago. We are evacuating citizens from a denied safe passage zone. You can complain through the proper channels." "And if I block the road?" Pike looked past him. Far above, all 24 rescue ships adjusted position at the same time. No threats, no targeting beams, just engines humming with the quiet confidence of machines built by people who had practiced this exact nightmare 1,000 times. "Then we walk." Sareth did block the road. He did it with 3 armored Dominion crawlers, 2 legal officers, and a line of hovering claim drones that projected the Valor seal across the dirt street in bright white light. To him, it looked official. To Lieutenant Pike, it looked like a bad parking job. The human rescue team had already moved the children from the cafeteria to the front hall, each one wearing a reflective thermal blanket like a little silver cape. Mrs. Ortiz walked at the rear with the stuffed rabbit tucked under one arm and a clipboard in the other, because some people faced the end of the world by keeping attendance. Pike stood at the bottom of the school steps and studied the blockade for a long, quiet second. Then he touched his earpiece. "Road 1 is blocked." Switching to walking plan. Commander Sareth tilted his head, confused by the lack of panic. "You cannot bypass an active Dominion barrier." Pike looked at him. "Sure we can. Sidewalk is clear." "That is not a sidewalk. That is an agricultural drainage path. Back home, we call that good enough." The first child came out holding the hand of a rescuer named Maya Brooks, a medic from Kansas City who kept her voice soft and steady. "Eyes on me, sweetheart. Do not look at the drones. Look at my glove. See the blue stripe? Follow the blue stripe." The girl nodded and stepped carefully down the stairs. Behind her came Caleb, counting under his breath. 1, 2, 3, 4. He was taking his job seriously enough to make his chin wobble. Every camera in the council chamber followed them. The galaxy watched 12 children walk in a single file line across red dust while alien officers argued about mineral rights 30 feet away. Orvin's hands clenched on his bench. "This is emotional theater," he snapped. Grace Holloway finally sat down again, calm as a librarian. "No, magistrate. This is what your paperwork looks like when people have names." On Red Creek, the Dominion drones descended lower, trying to herd the rescuers away from the drainage path. One moved too close to a little boy with round glasses, and he flinched so hard he dropped his lunchbox. The sound was small, just plastic hitting dirt, but every human on that street stopped. Not fast, not dramatic, just stopped. Lieutenant Pike turned his head toward the drone. His voice stayed level. "Move that machine back 10 feet. Sareth gave a thin smile. "Or what?" Pike did not answer him. He looked up at the sky. A second later, one of the Earth rescue craft opened its side bay and released a swarm of tiny orange emergency beacons. They floated down gently around the children, forming a bright protective lane from the schoolhouse to the waiting ship. No weapons, no threats, just rescue equipment, stamped with medical crosses and civilian evacuation codes. The Dominion drones froze. Their navigation systems could not enter a registered humanitarian corridor without accepting legal liability. Grace watched Orvin realize it. That was the first crack in his face. Not fear yet. Something smaller. Irritation turning into doubt. Sareth stared at the orange lights, then at Pike. You planned this. Pike bent down, picked up the lunchbox, brushed off the dust, and handed it back to the boy. Commander, we planned for worse than you. The children kept walking. By the time the first child reached the rescue craft, Commander Sareth had stopped smiling completely. The little ship's side ramp lowered into the red dust with a soft hydraulic sigh, and inside were not soldiers waiting in rows. There were booster seats. There were emergency blankets. There were juice pouches, oxygen masks, stuffed animals still in clear plastic, and a young flight nurse with a ponytail who was already writing names on wristbands with a black marker. Caleb stepped onto the ramp, looked around, and whispered, "This looks like a dentist office with engines." Lieutenant Pike gave him a tired half-smile. "That is pretty close, buddy. Pick a seat by the window if you want, but buckle up first." Mrs. Ortiz stood at the bottom of the ramp and counted every child twice. She said each name out loud, not because the computer needed it, because she did. Caleb Turner, Ruthie Bell, Mason Price, June Alvarez. Her voice shook on the last one, but it did not break. On the council feed, 12 names appeared beside 12 faces. The chamber shifted again. Names were harder to ignore than numbers. Grace Holloway watched the list populate on her tablet, then sent it directly to the public archive. Orvin noticed too late. "Remove that from the record," he ordered. Grace did not look up. No. The single word landed harder than a speech. Orvin's head turned slowly. "Ambassador, you are testing the patience of this court." "No, magistrate. I am preserving evidence." Down on Red Creek, Sareth pushed through his officers and stopped 10 feet from Pike. His translator clipped each word into sharp, polished English. "You have removed the juveniles. Your stated purpose is complete. Depart." Pike glanced past him toward the clinic, where 2 more Earth teams were helping elderly settlers into a second craft. "Not yet. Those adults are illegal occupants. Those adults are people. They are not under immediate threat." At that exact moment, the Dominion survey rig behind the town emitted a deep mechanical tone. The ground under the main street trembled, not enough to damage anything, just enough to rattle windows and make every parent in Mercy Bend look up with the same cold understanding. The Dominion had started the preliminary mineral scan early. Sareth's officers froze. They knew the schedule. They knew it had not been authorized for another hour. Pike looked at Sareth, and for the first time, there was something in his eyes besides patience. "You want to try that sentence again?" Sareth said nothing. In the council chamber, Orvin snapped at his aides, "Cut the Red Creek feed." The screen went black for half a second. Then it came back from a different angle. Then another. Then 20 more. Helmet cameras. Ship cameras. A weather satellite. A child's school tablet propped up near a cafeteria window. Grace folded her hands. Earth anticipated technical difficulties. Across the room, the Marrow delegate let out a soft sound that might have been a laugh. Orvin stared at the multiplying feeds with growing disbelief. Humans had not come to argue. They had come with paperwork, cameras, medics, teachers, pilots, lawyers, snacks, and enough backup plans to make the council itself look underprepared. Sareth finally lifted his arm and signaled his orbital cutters. "Lock the rescue ships in place," he said. "No vessel leaves without Dominion clearance." Pike heard the order through an open channel. He helped Mrs. Ortiz step onto the ramp, then touched his earpiece. "Grace, he just closed the sky." In the council chamber, Ambassador Holloway stood. Her face was calm, but every delegate felt the temperature of the room change. "Thank you, Lieutenant," she said. "Now we can begin." "Now we can begin" did not sound like a threat. That was what made it worse. Grace Holloway did not raise her voice. She did not point at Orvin. She simply touched the edge of her tablet, and the central screen in the council chamber changed from the Red Creek rescue feed to a clean legal document with the Dominion seal stamped across the top. Orvin looked at it once and went very still. "Where did you get that?" he asked. Grace adjusted her glasses. "From your public filing system. That file is restricted." "No, magistrate. It is poorly labeled." A low murmur spread through the chamber. On the screen was the Dominion mineral claim, the document that had supposedly justified the seizure of Red Creek. Grace swiped once, enlarging a paragraph near the bottom. According to your own claim, the Dominion requested immediate extraction rights due to unstable subcrustal pressure beneath Mercy Bend. Your words, not mine. Orvin's face tightened. A standard precautionary phrase. Then you admit the zone is unstable. I admit nothing. Good, Grace said. Then we will let your commander admit it for you. The screen split, and Saratha's voice played from the open channel, clean and unmistakable. Lock the rescue ships in place. No vessel leaves without Dominion clearance. Grace let the silence sit for 2 seconds. The Dominion has now confirmed 3 facts. 1. Red Creek is an active hazard zone under your own filing. 2. Earth citizens are present inside that zone. 3. Dominion forces are preventing evacuation. She looked up at the judges. That is not a property dispute anymore. That is unlawful containment of civilians during a declared hazard. Orvin stood so fast his chair drifted backward. This court will not be manipulated by human word games. They are not word games, Grace said. They are your laws. On Red Creek, Lieutenant Pike received the update through his earpiece and let out a slow breath. He stood beside the ramp of rescue craft 4 while the children sat buckled inside, wrapped in blankets, sipping apple juice from little foil pouches. Mrs. Ortiz had taken the seat nearest the door, one hand on Caleb's shoulder, pretending not to be scared because adults do that when kids are watching. Outside, the sky above Mercy Bend shimmered as the Dominion cutters projected a pale containment field across the upper atmosphere. It looked delicate, almost pretty, like sunlight on soap bubbles. Pike looked at it and said, "Well, that is inconvenient." His co-pilot, Dana Reeves, leaned from the cockpit. Define inconvenient. Like finding out your neighbor parked across your driveway when your house is filling with smoke. So, regular Tuesday? Pretty much. Saratha's voice boomed over the town speakers. Human rescue vessels, power down your engines, and await inspection. Pike keyed his microphone. Commander, we have miners on board, medical evacuees in transit, and a filed emergency corridor. Drop the field. Denied. Pike nodded once, as if Sarath had just answered a checklist. Copy that. Then he switched channels. Holloway, he denied release on record. In the council chamber, Grace closed her eyes for half a heartbeat. Not in relief. Not in fear. In confirmation. When she opened them, her expression had gone flat and calm, the way humans looked when the talking part was over. High Magistrate Orvin, she said, under Article 31 of the Council Charter, Earth is invoking compulsory humanitarian passage. Orvin stared at her. Several delegates began searching their own tablets. One of them whispered, that article has not been used in 200 years. Grace heard him and nodded. Because most species are smart enough not to trap schoolchildren under a mining field. The chamber went dead quiet. Far above Red Creek, beyond the containment shimmer, space bent in 12 places at once. Not with the flash of warships. Not with the roar of an invasion. 12 massive white vessels emerged from dark space, each painted with a red medical stripe visible from orbit. Hospital ships. Evacuation carriers. Civilian Rescue Command. Earth had not sent an armada. Earth had sent witnesses too large to ignore. The 12 hospital ships did not move like warships. They moved like buildings that had decided to cross the sky. Broad white hulls, red medical stripes, soft beacon lights, no weapons ports, no attack formation. They settled above the containment field in a wide circle, each one broadcasting the same message in 37 council languages. Civilian humanitarian vessel. Medical corridor requested. Evacuation priority. Miners aboard. Non-combatants aboard. Live record active. On Red Creek, every Dominion screen began filling with patient manifests, oxygen readings, child identification numbers, evacuation maps, school attendance logs, and the name of every adult still waiting near the clinic. Commander Sarath stared at the data flood as if the humans had started throwing filing cabinets from orbit. Block those transmissions, he ordered. His communications officer tried, then went pale in the strange Dominion way, all color draining from the thin skin around his eyes. Commander, we cannot. Medical ships are using council emergency bans. Then override them. That would register as interference with humanitarian rescue. Sarath turned slowly. And the officer swallowed. And the penalty includes automatic suspension of all Dominion trade privileges pending review. In the council chamber, that sentence landed like a dropped glass. The Valor Dominion was powerful because it owned minerals, shipping lanes, fuel depots, and half the loans that kept smaller planets breathing. But it was also powerful because everybody kept doing business with it. Grace Holloway stood beneath the giant screen, hands folded in front of her, as calm as a woman waiting at a bank counter. For clarity, she said, Earth has not requested sanctions. Earth has not requested military action. Earth has requested a hallway. Orvin glared down at her. You brought 12 interstellar vessels to ask for a hallway? Grace looked at the live feed of children sitting inside Rescue Craft 4, wrapped in blankets, still waiting because one proud man would not let them leave. Yes. On Red Creek, Lieutenant Pike stepped inside the rescue craft for a moment and crouched beside Caleb. The boy had stopped counting. His juice pouch sat unopened in his lap. Are we stuck? Caleb asked. Pike shook his head. No, sir. We are delayed. Is delayed bad? Pike glanced through the open ramp at the shimmering sky, at Sareth arguing with his officers, at the Dominion crawlers blocking a road nobody needed anymore. Delayed is annoying. Bad is when grown-ups forget kids are listening. Caleb thought about that, then nodded like it made perfect sense. Mrs. Ortiz looked at Pike over the child's head. She did not say anything. She did not need to. Far above them, the lead hospital ship opened its lower bay. A long silver structure unfolded into the upper atmosphere, piece by piece. Not a weapon, not a boarding tube, but a civilian skybridge designed for disasters on cracked moons and flooded colonies. Then 11 more began unfolding. Sareth's sensors screamed with warnings, but none of them said attack. They said medical docking system. They said emergency shelter extension. They said protected civilian infrastructure. His entire containment field had been built to stop engines. It had not been built to stop a hospital from making the ground part of itself. Grace watched Orvin read the same realization in the council data. His armor still shone. His voice still carried authority. But for the first time all day, he looked smaller than the woman standing below him. Ambassador Holloway, he said carefully, you are escalating this beyond proportion. Grace finally turned her full attention to him. Magistrate, you tried to make 12 children into property. Earth is showing you the proper proportion. On Red Creek, the first skybridge touched down beside the schoolhouse with a soft chime. Its doors opened. Warm light spilled across the dust, and every Dominion claim drone in Mercy Bend automatically backed away. The Dominion claim drones backed away because they had to. Their little silver bodies were smarter than the officers who launched them, and the moment the skybridge touched Red Creek soil, every machine in Mercy Bend recognized a protected medical corridor. One by one, their white Valor seals blinked from ownership mode to standby, like arrogant little stars going out. Lieutenant Pike watched it happen, then gave Mrs. Ortiz a gentle nod. Time to move, ma'am. She stood, smoothed the front of her cardigan like she was about to lead a class field trip, and turned to the children. All right, line up. Same buddy system. No running. No pushing. And Caleb, keep counting. Caleb wiped his nose on his sleeve before Maya Brooks could stop him. 1, 2, 3. He began, his voice steadier this time. The children stepped from the rescue craft into the warm light of the skybridge. Inside, the walls glowed soft yellow, and the floor adjusted under their shoes so the moon's lower gravity would not make them stumble. A nurse handed Ruthie Bell a new stuffed rabbit because her old one had been dragged through red dust. Ruthie hugged both, unwilling to betray either. On every council screen, the rescue became impossible to dismiss. It was not a raid. It was not a stunt. It was children walking past adults who had failed them. Commander Sareth tried to follow them into the corridor. The doorway chimed once and projected a calm human voice. Access denied. This is a protected civilian medical passage. Sareth stiffened. I am the local authority. Local authority is not authorized inside pediatric evacuation space without consent of Guardian personnel. I demand inspection. Inspection request logged. Estimated review time, 4 hours. This is Dominion land. The voice paused for half a beat, almost politely. The floor you are standing on is currently Earth medical infrastructure. In the council chamber, a few delegates forgot to hide their reactions. The Marrow representative covered his mouth. Another lowered his eyes, either embarrassed or amused. Orvin looked as though he had discovered that humans could turn manners into a locked door. Grace Holloway tapped her tablet again. For the record, all 12 miners are now inside protected passage. Elderly evacuees are entering Corridor 2. Medical patients are entering Corridor 3. Dominion officers remain outside, as required by council law. Orvin's voice was low. You are enjoying this. Grace looked up at him. No, I am documenting it. That answer bothered him more than anger would have. Anger could be dismissed. Anger could be labeled emotional, unstable, primitive. But Grace was not angry in any useful way. She was organized. On Red Creek, Sareth stepped away from the skybridge door and opened a private channel to his orbital cutters. Prepare to tow the human craft once the corridors detach. His navigator hesitated. Commander, the hospital ships are broadcasting live asset locks. Any tow attempt will be recorded as interference with medical equipment. I said prepare. Yes, Commander. But he did not move. That hesitation spread through the Dominion crews like frost across glass. They had served the Dominion all their lives. They had enforced claims on dozens of worlds. But none of those claims had involved school children, hospital ships, and half the galaxy watching in real time. Inside the lead hospital ship, Caleb pressed his face to a round window and saw Red Creek shrinking below him through the skybridge glass. Mrs. Ortiz, he whispered, are my parents coming too? She sat beside him and took his hand. Yes, sweetheart. Everyone is coming. Pike heard her from 3 seats away. He wanted to promise the same thing. Instead, he checked the adult manifest and watched the number climb. 31 evacuated. 46. 62. Then his earpiece crackled. Dana Reeves spoke from the cockpit, quieter than before. Lieutenant, Dominion cutters are shifting position. They are not blocking the kids anymore. They are moving toward the adult corridors. Pike looked down at the town, at the clinic ramp where the last parents were still waiting. Then he keyed Grace's channel. Ambassador, they are about to test the hallway. The Dominion cutters moved toward the adult corridors, slow enough to pretend it was procedure, close enough that every pilot in orbit knew what it meant. Inside Rescue Craft 4, the children felt nothing but a soft change in engine tone. Inside the council chamber, however, every delegate watched the distance markers shrink. Grace Holloway lifted one hand, not to stop them, but to mark the moment. Let the record show Dominion vessels are approaching active civilian evacuation corridors after formal warning. Orvin did not speak. For once, he was waiting too. Commander Sareth stood beneath the skybridge, staring up at the pale shapes of his cutters sliding across the morning sky. Tow Corridor 2, he ordered. Gently. No damage. His navigator looked at him over the channel. Commander, there are parents inside. Sareth's eyes narrowed. There are illegal settlers inside. The navigator did not answer. That was the second crack. The first had been doubt. The second was conscience. A blue tow field reached from the nearest cutter and touched the outer shell of Corridor 2. It did not break anything. It did not injure anyone. It simply tried to pull the passage away from the clinic entrance. The hospital ship responded instantly, not with force, but with paperwork so complete it felt like a door slamming shut. Every screen in the system flashed the same message. Medical interference confirmed. Automatic council review initiated. Dominion trade protections suspended pending emergency vote. All member worlds notified. For 3 silent seconds, the most powerful mineral empire in the region stopped being untouchable. Fuel contracts froze. Shipping insurance paused. Bank guarantees vanished from public ledgers. Across 32 systems, Valor captains suddenly found docking permissions turning yellow. Not red. Not hostile. Just yellow. The color of bureaucracy asking very expensive questions. Sareth looked at his tablet as messages poured in from governors, merchants, fleet accountants, and one furious finance minister asking what he had done to a farming moon nobody could find on a school map. In the council chamber, Orvin sat back down slowly. Grace's voice was gentle, almost sad. You built a civilization where money moves faster than mercy. So Earth filed mercy where your money could see it. The emergency vote took 4 minutes. Not because the law was unclear, because pride dies slowly in public. One by one, the delegates confirmed compulsory passage. Then they confirmed suspension of the Dominion claim until civilian review. Then, finally, they confirmed that no child, no parent, no teacher, no farmer, and no exhausted nurse could ever be classified as property under council language again. Orvin did not look at Grace when the final vote passed. He looked at the floor. On Red Creek, Sareth received the order and stood very still. Then he lowered his arm. The cutters backed away. The tow field vanished. The skybridge settled back into place with a soft chime, as if nothing dramatic had happened at all. Pike heard Dana exhale over the comm. Hallway is clear. He nodded once. Bring them home. The last evacuees came through Corridor 3 just after sunset. Tired adults carrying family photos, medicine bags, muddy boots, and one pie wrapped in a towel because Mrs. Bell refused to leave it cooling on the counter. Caleb found his parents near the hospital ship intake station and ran so fast his blanket slipped off his shoulders. His mother caught him and held him like gravity had finally started working again. Mrs. Ortiz watched from a bench, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Pike sat beside her, helmet resting on his knees. You did good, he said. She gave a small laugh. I teach 4th grade. This was still easier than the spring concert. Far away, in the council chamber, Grace Holloway packed her tablet and coat. Orvin's voice followed her, quieter than before. Ambassador, was Earth prepared to go further? Grace stopped at the door. For a moment, the whole galaxy seemed to lean in. She turned back, tired, composed, and terribly human. Magistrate, Earth was prepared to bring them home. You decided how hard that needed to be. Years later, Red Creek was still empty. The wheat fields grew wild. The little schoolhouse with the red metal roof became a protected landmark, not because a battle had been fought there, but because a line had been drawn there without a single angry speech. Children on other worlds learned the story in civics class. Traders quoted the law. Parents remembered the names. And whenever some powerful official tried to turn people into categories, someone would bring up the day humanity arrived with hospital ships, juice pouches, teachers, lawyers, and a hallway nobody could close. The galaxy learned something simple on Red Creek. Humans are not dangerous because they love conflict. Humans are dangerous because when they decide someone matters, they will organize the entire universe around getting that person home.